106.3 FM, The Source.
We're going to find out about God, Robin. Are you ready to find out about God?
I'm ready.
First, I have to find out how to pronounce our guests' names. Ptolemy, Robin? Ptolemy? Tompkins? Ptolemy Tompkins is the former editor at Guideposts magazine. He's a contributor to the Los Angeles Times, the Best Spiritual Writing and the Best American Writing, Harper's, BeliefNet, and others. And he's on the phone with Bernard Haisch, an astrophysicist. Thank you. The scientific editor of the Astrophysical Journal for 10 years, was the deputy director of the Center for Extreme Ultraviolet Astrophysics at UC Berkeley, and the visiting scientist at the Max Planck Institute for Extra. Oh my gosh, how do you say this word? But anyway, think about what we just said. I just told you 2 people are on the phone. One seems to be a person of faith, and one seems to be a person of science. And they've written a book called Proof of God: The Shocking True Answer to the World's Most Important Question. Gentlemen, I must tell you that if I put both of you up at the same time, there might be a little bit of an echo. I'll try my best to write it out, but let me try real quickly just to say good morning to both of you. And good morning, Mr. Tompkins and Mr. Haisch.
Good morning. Yes, good morning. Haisch.
Okay, is it Haisch? I'm sorry?
Haisch. Haisch.
Haisch. Okay, all right. Let me start with this.
And it's Ptolemy.
Ptolemy, thank you. Thank you. And where are you guys? Where are you calling from?
This is Bernie. I'm calling from the San Francisco area.
San Francisco. Both of you there?
And I'm calling from Maine.
Oh, Maine. Oh, wow. So a big triangle here. From San Francisco to Maine.
American stereo.
Yes, we got American stereo. All right, so let me start with Ptolemy, if I could. Proof of God. How do we prove God? How do we do that?
Well, this is a little tough with Bernie listening in because I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. But essentially, the proof lies in the fact that the universe is extraordinarily well made. It is, I am self-conscious because Bernie's listening, so this is killing me, but I'm going to try. You go back to the very beginning, the Big Bang. People think the Big Bang just happened, life just sort of arose, we just sort of showed up, and, there was nothing much to it. In fact, as Bernie showed me in tremendous detail, nothing could be further from the case. If you just start out with something simple like the gravitational constant. The gravitational constant means if you take a pencil on your desk and you drop it, it will drop at a certain speed and hit the table with a certain force. Now, that constant, and people don't know this mostly, was set at the beginning of the universe, and it was set very precisely. It could have been set quite differently. The pencil could float off into the air. It could hit a lot harder so that it would break your desk. It could be anything, but it was set so precisely in order that, I think Bernie does too, stars would be allowed to form, planets would be allowed to form around them, and life could be allowed to arise on this planet. How precisely did gravity need to be set in order for this to happen? With a precision beyond our wildest imagining. Like, if gravity had been set off by a trillionth of a point, then if it was a little weaker, the universe, the Big Bang, everything would have blasted off, no stars would form, no you, no me, no Bernie, no radio station, no Florida. If it had been set just a little heavier, the Big Bang would have been a big blip, and everything would have popped off back into nothingness again. But it was set with this extraordinary precision, and one has to wonder why, and one has to wonder, I think, who or what set it that way.
Right.
Because like I said, it could have been set any old way at all.
Okay. And so it sounds like what you're doing is making an argument for God, but dovetailing that argument with the scientific theory that there was a Big Bang.
Yes. And Bernie's pretty sure there was. I know apparently there's a little bit of an argument now as to whether there was a Big Bang or not, and that's the great thing about real science. Everything can be just, spilled off the table all at once.
Right.
But I suspect there probably was, and I defer to Bernie on that.
Or let's go.
Speaking of Bernie, you might want to.
Yeah, let's ask Bernie some questions. And again, gentlemen, what I'm trying to do is keep the echo from being so disruptive for both of you. So you're still both on, but right now, Bernie, I have you louder. Bernard Haisch. I'm Haisch. I'm so sorry. I'm probably saying your name wrong. Could the Big Bang theory be replicated? Like, could scientists actually do this again?
No, they couldn't, and there's a big problem there, as we don't know how to treat something that doesn't take place in time. See, if you run the evidence back from the Big Bang down to the time when it happened, you bring everything down to a point. But what happened before that? What made this point exist and suddenly blow up and form a universe? We have no way to address that now in any kind of a scientific fashion because that involves time, but there is no time before time. So we've got a real conundrum here in terms of trying to understand the cause of the Big Bang, because its cause is someplace prior to time equals zero. But what does that mean? The problem.
Okay, so help me understand the Big Bang, and then we get back to God. Was every piece of matter that exists in the universe all one big clump, or did it start out as like an atom? It was just a tiny little atom, and then everything grew from that?
No, it actually began, we think at least, with all the stuff there that's ever going to be found in the universe. But it's all compressed down to a point, literally a point, if you believe the mathematics at that scale. So it was all there, and you can't make something out of nothing, so it all had to come apart, and it all had to come together at that point, and bang, it happened, and off it went.
So connect that to God, so that I can understand it better.
Back when Einstein was developing his relativity theory about gravity, he thought, and most astronomers thought, and most everybody thought, that the universe was infinite in size, that the universe was infinitely large and was infinitely old. And it was discovered a few years after Einstein's theory, that that's not the case. The universe is not only not infinitely large, it's expanding. It's an expanding universe. And that is a very different sort of universe than one that would have been, immortal. So the creation of a universe by a God, pretty consistent with what you find in religious interpretations, because even in Genesis you find that there was a quote, light of some sort, and the universe was made. It didn't exist forever. And actually, the religious perspective had a better view of things than the scientific one did back around the time of Einstein.
Right.
Is there more than one world? I mean, do we actually live in different dimensions?
Well, that depends. Some of the modern string theories that physicists study are really complicated, and they require additional dimensions, and they involve the possibility of many other universes existing beyond ours, maybe even an infinite number of universes existing beyond ours. So, really, terra incognita. We don't really know what's going on down there at the moment of the Big Bang.
So when we look at what we know on planet Earth, does anything that we know explain why? Like, I'm going to speak on the assumption that you both believe there is a God. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I mean, why? Why would God create all of this? And if so, why does He make us imperfect? Why do we make so many mistakes?
Well, I think I've got if not the answer to that, which would become arrogant to say, but clue in that direction, it would be like this: that we are not really separate. We are sparks of God. That God somehow sort of throws out into the universe sparks of Himself, which should then go and inhabit the various bodies of the creatures in that universe, us, for example. And that process is one that gives God the ability to know Himself, to understand what His own self consists of, to perhaps even to perfect Himself through the lives of these sparks of God, which are you and me, and all the creatures that exist in the universe. And we get to live lives that actually are actualizations of God's infinite potential. And so that's the point of it. The point of it is for a God to experience Himself, because it's a lot more fun to play a game and to write the rules of the game. And why there is this tendency for evil to happen in the world, that goes back to the concept of free will. The universe that is created by God for the purpose of exploring himself is one in which free will exists. Because if it didn't exist, then the whole thing would be just like a puppet show and would be of no use to anybody. So it's the free will that gets in the way of things, because it allows us sometimes to make choices that lead down very dark alleys and take us in a direction we shouldn't go. But when we do live a positive life, I think that goes back to God ultimately, and maybe even makes God more perfect. I don't know.
Can I ask a question? Ptolemy, do you think that those of us who learned about God from religion get it? Like, for example, I grew up in a Christian home. You know, I have friends who grew up in a Jewish home. I have other friends who grew up in a Muslim home, and I don't have any Buddhist friends, but I'm sure their beliefs are different. But they all talk about some kind of a creator. Do we? Are we really talking about the same thing?
Yes, and one of the reasons, as you can see, Bernie's the wonky guy and I'm the pop guy. And that's why I wanted to write the book, because I thought it was a good mix. But I think it's important to understand that faith and science are two very different forms of engagement with the world. And they shouldn't be mixed up together, because science is science and faith is faith. But the important message to get, and this is if you're a believer or a member of any faith whatsoever, is that, I'm a Christian myself, and many Christians today think, or many struggling Christians say, I want to have faith that there's a God, that there's a being who created me and cares about me, but science won't let me do this, because science has proved that all this faith business is nonsense, and we live in a purposeless universe, and we just happen to have arisen, randomly, and there's no point to anything. And what I suspected at the start of this book, and what Bernie really taught me in considerable detail, as you can imagine from listening to him, is that this is not the case. We live in a universe that is shot through with purpose, and if we pay attention to what science, real science, not materialistic science, but real science is telling us, then it is a tremendous aid to our faith. Faith always involves a kind of effort of the will, a desire to say, I want to believe, and so I want to learn more about, what I am and what God is. And science doesn't work on exactly those principles, but what science has come to show us is not a barrier to developing that faith, but a huge arm reaching out to help us and lift us up and help our faith become stronger. They're two separate lines of engagement, but science helps faith. It doesn't block it. And most people, or many people, don't understand that. And I think it's just a crime, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to write this book with Bernie.
Yeah. Could one of you, and I would love to hear from the astrophysicist point of view, explain what exactly happens when we pray?
Well, that's what we should be doing, is to go inside, because God is not, in my view, God is not elsewhere in the universe. God is within us all, because God is He is the spark that we animates us. So finding God is not a matter of going someplace else. It's a matter of looking inside you. I guess you would apply the techniques of meditation to that, the stillness. Really about all I could say one more thing. That is that I think prayer does have the potential to be effective, because God is anything at all. He's creative. That's one thing for sure that God is creative. There are sparks of God. We take some of that creativity with us. Who can create things in the.
Okay, so can prayer actually manipulate? And I don't mean manipulate in a bad way, but I mean affect. Maybe a bad word is affect. Can prayer affect our lives? Can prayer affect other people's lives?
I think it can, because of this ability of ours to be creative. I'd be interested to get Ptolemy on here doing that.
But let me try to ask it this way. If I were to call Robin on the phone and say, Robin, my car is stuck, can you come help me out? That's kind of like saying a prayer, and I'm using technology to communicate to the person I'm praying to. In this case, it would be Robin to get me out of the mud or something. And I'm wondering sometimes if prayer isn't not just to ourselves, but to maybe an external spiritual being.
I think it applies everywhere. So,
say it again. I'm sorry.
For the universe to help us, so to speak. By the way, that sending out the request to the universe is kind of something that drives astronomers crazy when they hear this, because the universe is not supposed to be some place where you get anything like prayer coming back to you. But never mind that. So I think that's it. Not only is it the fact that God is within us, but I think we are all interconnected. This would take us into a long discussion of quantum mechanics, which I don't want to get into, and we don't have time now.
Yeah.
But there's that aspect of it as well.
You bring up the example of water in the book, the properties of water, from everything to icebergs to ice cubes to making martinis. Water really is an amazing substance.
It is, and it has a rather large range in which it's liquid, which we want. We want liquid water. That's what we need for life.
Yeah.
So there's a rather large range for it, larger than you would expect based upon the behavior of other atoms. And so, and this results in the fact that water becomes more dense as it freezes. So that would make ice cubes sink to the bottom of the ocean, and eventually everything would probably freeze over. And as you say, a martini would probably not taste so good either.
You know, I've often thought that the fact that water evaporates and then flies in the form of a cloud to the top of a mountain, and then rains, and then a river flows down, and once again we have fresh water that's constantly being recycled. That almost seems like a miracle. That seems like there is somebody in charge. That sounds like that's almost akin to what you said about gravity earlier.
I agree with that. That we don't need a God to interfere with things, which is what the intelligent design people think about. Maybe I'm misrepresenting them. I shouldn't say that probably. But I think that it's rather impressive for a God to have made up laws of physics that lead to these things. More impressive to do that than to muck with than to intercede with the world in a kind of a crude way.
And some people think that because there is so much more destruction going on now, people having total disregard for human life, and they'd rather kill somebody than preserve it, that there might not be a God, but I disagree with that.
Down to the question of free will. Free will is the basis of all of this. If there were no free will, it's the only thing to do to make a universe and have zombies walking around in it. We're not zombies.
Do you feel that having Ptolemy? Do you feel that having Bernard on as a co-author gives it more credential? Do you feel like bringing a scientist into a religious discussion gives it somehow more believability, I guess?
Well, it's like the old commercial for Reese's peanut butter cups. I mean, religion and science are different, but they're two great tastes that go great together. And, I love listening to what Bernie was saying about God being present within each one of us, because he's speaking in a different language, but he sounds remarkably like this rather famous fellow named Jesus, who told us that God is closer to us than our own jugular vein. In other words, if we want to find out about God, the place to go is within.
Right.
And I love the fact that he speaks in scientific language about subjects that resonate with faith language. It's a different language, but there's this profound resonance. And often when you have resonance between two different styles of thought and approach to the world, that means there might be something to those different approaches.
And there might be a clue, too, in the Bible itself. The name of Jesus means I am.
I think, I don't want to differ with you, but I think that's what God's name is. I am that I am.
Je suis.
But,
in French, je suis means I am. And
suis.
yeah, and it looks like Jesus to an English speaker.
C'est moi la vérité.
Humans and animals seem to coexist with each other. It's the humans that seem to try to rule the world and break out of the norm. Where animals, they eat and sleep and that's it.
I would say that one of the things about human beings is that we are both the most advanced beings on the planet and the least advanced, because unlike animals, animals know what to do and when to do it, humans, to a certain degree, at a certain point, are clueless. It's like we're born with only half the map. And we have this, as Bernie pointed out, this troublesome thing called free will, which allows us to do whatever we want. And I think the evidence is plentiful that at the moment we're using our free will in rather problematic ways.
Right.
But that's the nature of the situation. I mean, most of the problems we've got on the planet today are caused by us. And that's part of the deal. That's part of what God gave us at the beginning. It's like, I developed this yesterday. I found myself talking to a guy on a sports radio show. So I was like, okay, I'm on sports radio. What am I going to do? So I said, I'll use a football analogy. And I'll say, okay, God is the quarterback, right? And he's got all these people coming at him. He's got to think with lightning speed, and he's got to direct this pass. He's got to throw this football with surgical accuracy to this receiver at the far end of the field. And he's going to put it as close to that receiver as he can. And quite often, it's almost, like I said, surgically accurate in its precision. But what does the receiver have to do with that ball as it comes toward him? Well, he has to catch it. And that's our job. Our job is to catch the ball that God has thrown to us. And we have the choice to just let it bounce off our chest and hit the ground, or we can catch it and we can run with it and we can make it into the end zone.
That's brilliant.
Or at least that's what I came up with yesterday on the sports.
Well, that's brilliant. I love that. I love the fact that the book stimulates this kind of conversation. And that is what I think this book is going to do for everybody who gets it. It's called Proof of God, The Shocking True Answer to the World's Most Important Question. I did find it on Amazon. Do you guys have a website you want to direct us to?
Just go to Bernie, because I haven't updated
.com.
What? Say it again? Say the .com?
GodTheory.com. All run together. GodTheory.com.
Godtheory.com.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Let me try it again. Ptolemy, Tompkins, and Bernard Haisch. Thank you both for being on the show with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be right back.
Palm Garden announces Fast Track. Fast Track. Focused assessment, safe transition. When a new guest is admitted to Palm Garden, we start with the ABCs. A is the assessment to determine what the guest needs. B is for basic care, which is excellent nursing and therapy. And C is for consistency to provide what's needed throughout the stay. Fast Track. Palm Garden will get you home fast, really, really fast. Take a fast tour of Palm Garden, located at the corner of Southwest 27th Avenue and 34th Street.
Fox News Radio, I'm Chris Foster. There's a vote scheduled at noon in the Senate on whether a 3-week spending bill to end the government shutdown can proceed. Republican leader Mitch McConnell.
Every day we spend arguing about keeping the lights on is another day we cannot spend negotiating DACA